Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show. This is the first of our Aintree previews. It is the Grand National weekend, the Aintree Festival, and day one, Thursday's racing, is what we're going to be going through here. I'm your host, George Elek, and as ever, I'm joined by oddschecker's very own tipster, Andy Holding, and I'd say veteran now of the oddschecker betting show, Rory Delargy as well. Andy, I'm going to come for you for a weather forecast shortly because I know you don't live too far away from Aintree. But Rory, I'll come to you first. And how are you looking forward to? How are you feeling ahead of this weekend, especially in what's a pretty hectic, pretty incredible week of sport?
Yeah, it's Aintree's really stepped up in the last decade or so, and it doesn't fall far behind Cheltenham in terms of the quality of the top races there. So it's going to be a cracking week. I'm a big fan of the handicaps at this meeting, particularly the Topham races like that. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, aren't we all? And I was alluding there to a certain golf competition over in the States as well, Andy. I know you're a fan of that. Yeah. Anyone who's watching or listening to this, do go and check out. Yesterday we recorded with Oddschecker's tipster Niall Lyons. We did our Masters preview, so you can find that on the Oddschecker YouTube channel or on any the Oddschecker YouTube podcast feed as well. So Andy, busy week. I know you've had a couple of flutters in the Masters as well. So we can kick off by telling us who wins the Masters, then tell us what the ground's going to be like at Aintree. A man of all with many hats.
Yeah, I'm a bit disappointed with the draw for Brooks Koepka. I think he's out last with Rory, isn't it? And it'll be hopping mad, putting through all those spike marks. But I thought Brooks's games, other than his putting, is not in not bad shape. I've also had a few good on Joachim Neiman as well. There's several stats that throw up tournaments that he's played well in. I can't get the horses out of my head. He's played in that have significant bearing on the on Masters, and I thought he played quite well last year, just out the fringes of the action. But going back and watching the videos of some of his holes he played last year, he looked in good shape. So yeah, I thought he was a big price, 66.
Two words for you, Andy: Will Zalatoris. Remember that on Sunday evening.
Yeah,
he can't putt, but nor can I.
Yeah,
so
his tee to green shots gained approach and stuff like that. He's very good, but his putting's a bit ropey. But
that's all right.
Yeah,
if Sergio and Hideki can win Masters, so can he.
Exactly.
Anyway, let's look at Aintree. You said the weather today has been fairly unsettled, and you're an hour away from Aintree.
Yeah, I mean, I won't want to get too bogged down with what I say here because it could be quite localised, but we've had steady rain now here in sort of North Wales, which, as far as the crow flies, in and around, we've got Chester sort of 20 miles upwards, and then Aintree's about an hour away from me, as you say. We've had quite a bit of rain here from sort of 8 o'clock onwards, and it's still raining. So they are forecast that kind of inclement weather today, and I think then it kind of like scattered showers and then passes. And I think Friday and Saturday's quite good. So it should be welcome for Salika as well, Clark of the course, who's probably had a few sleepless nights in the last week or two, trying to work out how much water she's going to put on the courses to make sure that we don't get a repeat of Cheltenham, of course. But at the same time, we get safe ground for all the horses running over the national fences in the next few days. So very much a kind of situation that I'm sure she's been turning herself in knots in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into the racing now. As I say, this is the Thursday preview, so we're just going to go through the card as we did in our Cheltenham previews with Andy and Rory, getting each of their thoughts on each race through the weekend. This is Thursday, and do download the Oddschecker app now so you can see the best prices that we'll be talking about, the best bookie offers, place terms, free bets, and Andy's selections straight to the app in the morning of racing, not just throughout the major festivals, but through every day except when he's taking a well-earned holiday. On to the first then, the 145. It is the Manifesto Novices Chase, and we have Warlord is the 11-4 joint favourite with Pic D'Orhy. Gin on Lime is 9-2 alongside Ernie River. Miller's Bank 7-1. The Widowmaker 25-1. Jacamar 33-1. Andy, we'll give you first run in the opener.
Yeah, I mean, the perceived wisdom with quite a lot of these races at Aintree we're going to be talking about is, do we go with the Cheltenham Festival form, which in some cases stacks up, but in other cases it definitely pays to be fresh and to avoid having a hard race only sort of 20 odd days ago. Warlord obviously fits that criteria. I mean, finishing fourth in the Arkle. He was doing all his best work at the end as well. He was outpaced coming down the hill, and then once he hit the rising ground, he kept on quite well. So stepping up in trip shouldn't be a problem for him, and he's won over further before as well. So you could see Colin Tizard's charge going quite well. But I do think there is an angle in here with a couple of horses that have missed Cheltenham that might just cause a little bit of a surprise. Gin and Lime, not a massive surprise of that one because she's well known to UK punters, courtesy of that dramatic 2-runner race at Cheltenham early on in the season, involving the horse of Dan Skelton's, My Drogo. But she was, still not putting it up to him because I think My Drogo probably had her measure. But that's the kind of level we're dealing with here. And I think it's quite significant that Henry's kept her off for 146 days. He missed Cheltenham. She was entered up to run in the Arkle and the other novice race, the Marsh Chase, and decided to come here. But this track will very much play into her strengths. Front runners, prominent racers often have a big advantage, not only in this race, but on the chase track in general. And to my mind, she'll definitely go off in front here. And she could be quite difficult to catch if she gets into a good rhythm. Certainly very much respect her. And the other one I'd throw into the mix is the top one. I did an each-way Yankee that oddschecker and the boys got me to do for the start of the week. And I was trying to go for races where I could see an each-way angle at time of recording where there might be 7 runners or less. And obviously with the 7 runners now, this looks one of those races where at least I've predicted right. And I put up Earn River as my each-way pick here. This will be a big step forward for Nick Kent if he manages to train a Grade 1 winner. But I do think he's got a horse that's capable of going well here. His time figures have been pretty good. In fact, they're up there with some of the best of these, and he hasn't run in a festival race or a proper graded race yet. But he's beat some good horses along the way. He's fresh. I like his attitude. He stays really well. And his jumping seems to be quite good under pressure as well. So my 2 against the field here would be away from the obvious. I couldn't have a Nichols horse in this race, by the way, because he's never won it. And he's had some right flops in this race. He managed to get Dodging Bullets beat here a couple of years back. So I don't really like Pick Dory. So yeah, my 2 against the field here would be Gin and Lime and Earn River, with Earn River just about getting the vote, courtesy of the fact that I've already put him up and I can't really desert him now at this late hour.
Both those 2 are 9-2 as it stands. Earn River pretty much across the board. Jen Online with a couple of firms, including Coral, who are, according to the oddschecker grids, going a 5th of 3 places despite there being 7 runners. Although it looks maybe at the time of recording like Jacomar might be coming out basically as we're speaking, with a couple of firms going down there, in which case that 3 places won't be in existence, I wouldn't have thought, when it's down to 6 runners. But as I say, this is why you got to use the app. You've got to use the oddschecker grids in order to inform your selections when you're choosing how you're going to play races like this. Rory, that's 2 from Andy. How do you see this?
Yeah, I'd agree with Andy. I don't particularly like Pick Dory here. I thought he might be shorter actually than he is, but I'm not a massive fan. He is top rated in this. And I think he'll get plenty of support. But as Andy says, Paul Nicholls doesn't have a great record in this. And I don't think the yard's in particularly good form at the moment either. He's chasing the trainer's title. And I think there are going to be a few horses running on the next week or 2 who Paul might, in other circumstances, not run. But, he's chasing prize money. And, the trainer's title means a lot to him, going head-to-head with Dan Skelton as well. But I'm not a fan of Pick Dory. He did show... he impressed me more last time out. I thought he looked very, very genuine when beating Miller's Bank last time out, but I don't think that's great form either. And he didn't have an awful lot to beat when winning at Ascot in December. The others in that race just made mistakes, and he didn't have to do an awful lot to win that easily. And in between, he was a very weak finisher at Sandown. I know he was up against a horse he couldn't really beat that day. But I was disappointed with how he sort of packed things in when push came to shove. So I'm not keen on him. I think Warlord is pretty solid, but he's well found in the market at the top of it. I think he deserves to be favourite. I would struggle to back Gin and Lime just coming back from this break, given what happened to her last time out. I know she won that race at Cheltenham, but it was, she came to a complete standstill with that horrible mistake at the second last. And I'm not that keen to back horses with that kind of preparation. I'd agree with Andy again, though. Earn River has been impressive this season. I was impressed that he was able to win after quite a layoff on his reappearance. You wouldn't normally back Nick Kent horses off a break, but he was impressive when winning at Doncaster, and then he bolted up at Wetherby last time out. And although he hasn't beaten an awful lot, he's looked stylish, and he's done it nicely on the clock. He could be a massively underrated horse, to be honest. In a bigger yard, we'd be hearing a lot more about him. And I think it would be an absolutely tremendous result for Aintree if the first race of the meeting and the first Grade One was won by Nick Kent, who hasn't come close to that kind of success before, but is a perfectly competent trainer. It'll be a really good story, and I'd quite like to see that. But it wouldn't be my biggest betting event of the week, I have to say. Marginally favoured Warlord, but I think Earn River might just be a little underrated still.
Earn River 9-2, Warlord at the top of the market at 11-4. And negatives for Pick He seem to be the order of the day there from both the experts. And as I say, with Jacomar, I've just had a look. There's no confirmation about Jacomar being a non-runner, so do check that before having a look.
He's definitely out from the information I have.
Okay, definitely out. So that should be six to post in the first then at Aintree on Thursday. On then to the Juicen anniversary Juvenile Hurdle over just extended 2 miles, and Pied Piper is the 11-10 favourite. Brazil 9-4, Petit Tonnerre 10-1, Night Salute 16-1, Fortinet 20-1, Impulsive 133s 40-1 bar. 9 run here, so a decent each way angle if you are looking to back one at a bigger price away from the top two. But Rory, do you think that the top two are the right prices, or can you find an angle with those?
There's a potential angle with Fortinet right at the bottom for Venetia Williams. She has won all 3 of her starts over hurdles, having been trained by Guillaume Macaire. And she looked a really good prospect, but she is coming back off an injury layoff, which is a slight concern. Hence why she didn't go for the Triumph Hurdle. But her form looks good. It's worked out pretty well. She's done things very nicely. Certainly, just looking back at her first couple of starts, she was given an educational ride on her first start, but sort of jumped her way into contention and did that nicely. And she's her latest win at Vichy has worked out pretty well. So she's definitely underrated by the market. The question is whether she's absolutely ready to go here, or whether there's a case of she's ready for a run, and this tells connections where they stand with her. But she's a very interesting runner. There was a bit of 25-1 about her yesterday, which I thought was if I was a bookmaker, I wouldn't want to be laying odds that big on a completely unknown quantity, getting weight all round. Pied Piper is clearly the solid one. His form stacks up very well. His third in the Triumph. One or two people might have been disappointed with that, but he's run right up to form in doing that. He's a galloper rather than a quickener, but I think Davy Russell won't mess around on him. He'll look to hit the front halfway up the straight rather than hold him up until the last. He wasn't. He was a horse who was at his best on softish ground on the flat for John Gosden, and he was maybe a little disappointing when races turned tactical. But given a good gallop, he's looked a class act. So he deserves to be favourite. I'm not sure where I stand with Brazil. I don't think the Fred Winter was a particularly strong race. I know last year's Fred Winter went on and won a Grade One in his next start, and Brazil did look very good at Naas before winning at Cheltenham. But for me, Mark Walsh gave him a brilliant ride to win that Fred Winter. He knew Gaelic Warrior was a danger. He also knew Gaelic Warrior was jumping out to his right and causing problems potentially for him, getting caught in the backwash, other horses being interfered with. So Mark Walsh moved him up at an early stage onto the shoulder of the favourite, just to put pressure on him. And he was very well positioned the way that race went. And I think a few horses in that weren't particularly well positioned as it panned out. And I'm not sure it was an especially strong contest compared to one or two previous renewals. So I'm not sure he deserves to be as short as 9-4. Again, in terms of what he achieved on the clock at Cheltenham, he didn't take a big step forward there. And I'm just a little bit dubious of the form. For all, he is clearly very talented, Brazil. I would certainly prefer Pied Piper off the pair of them. But I'd be inclined to take a small chance, I think, on Fortinet each way, given the shape of the race and the number of runners here. If she is fit, then the level of her form gives her a decent chance. And given that she was showing that form last May, she's had plenty of time to develop physically. She could have progressed a fair bit from that if she's recovered fully from that injury.
Fortinet is 20-1 best price at the moment. That is with Bet365. Andy?
Yeah, I mean, unlike one or two of the stats for the first day and later on in the week with regards to Cheltenham form, this is quite a strong race for horses that have participated in the Triumph Hurdle. Been horses that have doubled up here and have finished down the field and come here and won. Obviously, there's a bit of a mix in there as well. Monreal winning last year and All Yours a few years ago. So it all depends which side of the fence you sit on. I just have I'm from the belief that the Triumph Hurdle was by far and away the strongest bit of form going into the festival. Away from the Fred Winter. That I agree with Rory with regards to Fred Winter. It was one of the slowest run races of the entire week. It was a bit of a head scratcher, really. I don't know why they went so slow, but it certainly paid to be handy. And Brazil was always relatively well positioned against Gaelic Warren. He basically just out sprinted him up the hill. But it was just a bit of a messy race. I can't really make head or tail of it, to be perfectly honest. So I'm not really sure, as I agree with Rory, what the value of the form actually means with regards to genuine Grade One form. Whereas Pied Piper's already proven himself in the white hot heat of a Triumph Hurdle, and it was a good Triumph Hurdle as well. We thought going into it that they spring juvenile form was the best form over in Ireland, and Vauban and Phil Dorr represented that by finishing first and second. But Pied Piper's bang there. He proved that his Cheltenham run prior to that was a very commendable one, and he's an honest galloper. He's not flash, but as you say, Rory says he just sees his races out well. He travels really well, got a good cruising speed. And I think the more rain that does fall in the next 24 hours will certainly help his cause. It probably got a bit lively for him in the end, come the first day of the festival. I think he probably could do with a little bit of ease in the ground. But all in all, I think the Irish are just by far and away the dominant force in this division. Don't like any of the English chances, as we saw with Knight Salute. He was only 9th in the tribe, but he just looked very small. When he went in the parade ring, looked how small he was compared to some of the horses in the ring that day. You could see why he struggled. Petit Tonnerre, we don't know much about him, but he jumped appallingly when he won at Market Race, and he beat Presenting Ned, for goodness sake. I mean, horse that beat Presenting Ned a length, I couldn't have him to win a Grade One. So I think Rory's right with Fortinet down the bottom. That could be the fly in the ointment. But it's interesting that the horse that finished third behind Fortinet, a horse called Mildam, got a rating of 125, ran in the Fred Winter and got beat 25 lengths by Brazil. So is that a fair representation of Fortinet? I don't know. It could be a bit of a reductive way of looking at it. I certainly get that. But the alarm bells are ringing for me with that French form as well. So, all in all, I think Pied Piper is a strong favourite. And if the Triumph Hurdle's worth the pound of flesh that we think it is, he should win this easily.
Pied Piper 11 to 10 best price. That's with William Hill. Odds on in plenty of places, even as short as 8 to 11 in a place, which might be suggestive of where that price is going to go between now and tomorrow at 2:20. On then to the Betway Bowl, the chase just over the extended 3 miles, and Protectorat is the 7 to 2 favourite ahead of Clan des Obeaux at 15 to 4. Conflated is 9 to 2. Kemboy 11 to 2. Eldorado Allen 6 to 1, Royal Pagaille 15 to 2, and then 3 horses at 25 to 1 bigger. Bristol de Mai 25s, Nutswell 33s, and Itchy Feet 66 to 1. 9 runners here, Andy. 1 firm and Skybet going 4 places as it is at the moment, in what looks like a pretty open renewal.
Yeah, very much so. But this is definitely a race I want to be looking at horses that have avoided the Gold Cup, particularly those that had a very hard race. I mean, Protectorat was absolutely driven out as if his life depended on him to finish third. I mean, he literally crawled over the line. I'll be amazed if that horse is anywhere near the level that he was when he won here at Aintree prior to going to the festival. And he's only had 20 days to recover. I think that'll almost be one of Dan Skelton's greatest training achievements if he manages to get Protectorat to win. And let's not forget that he beat Absolute Corpses when he won at Aintree early on in the season. So I couldn't have him on my mind at the prices. It's a race that if you look through its history, a lot of horses like your Water Friends, your Silviano Cocontis, your Kemboys, your Clan des Obeaux, they've missed the festival, and those that have taken part in the festival and come here and failed, trainers have gone back and thought, we're not doing that again. We'll discretion will be the better part of valor, and we'll skip Cheltenham this time around and come straight here. And that's what they've done with Kemboy. I mean, he was brilliant when he beat Clan des Obeaux here a few years back. I mean, it was a masterclass from Ruby Walsh in the play. I think that was Ruby's last ride, wasn't it? Off the top of my head, or he might have been very close to it, or certainly one of his.
It rode him at Punchestown. Ruled him a
Yeah,
Punchestown,
that's
didn't he?
yeah, he did. He went to Punchestown, then he
And
retired, didn't he? But
that was his last ride.
yeah, it was just a sensational ride. But he was really good that day, and I think that's Ken Boyd to a nutshell. I think he's very good around a track like this, sharp track, but tracks like Cheltenham and even to a smaller degree Leopardstown. I know he's won there, but I always think Leopardstown's a bit of a test for him. And I think he'd be well suited to pop him round Aintree again. I'd imagine he'll get an uncontested lead again. I know Bristol Demay's in the race as well, but I'd fancy Ken Boyd to have a little bit more boot than he would in the early part of the race. So it could well be that getting into a good rhythm from the front sees Ken Boyd come back to something like his best. And it's not as if he's been out of form either this season. He's been, up against the Plutards and all the good horses over in Ireland this season. But yeah, I'll just avoid, Protectorate and Royal Pagaille, concentrate on those that have skipped Cheltenham. Ken Boyd's one of them, and he, along with Clanders Abo, are one of the only 2 course and distance winners in the field, so he'll do for me at the prices.
I level a 2 Ken Boy with a couple of firms, Coral, William Hill, Ball Sports, Betfred, and a few others. The selection for Andy. Rory, how are you seeing the Betway Bowl?
I agree with a few points that that Andy made there. I'm not as big a fan of Ken Boy as he is. He's just he's too prone to mistakes these days for my liking. Andy's right. This kind of track suits him really well. And a flat track test of speed around this kind of trip, that's where he wins his races. When he won it wasn't still the Lexus then, was it, at Leopardstown a few years ago, where he's come from sort of mid-div to lead with the circuit to go, and then just caught them on the hop with an early turn of speed and showed the tactical pace to turn that race on its head. That's where he's at his best, but I just don't think he's quite as good as he was. He wasn't beaten far at Christmas again, but his jumping let him down in the Irish Gold Cup, and he's been a frustrating horse to follow now for the last year or two. So I'm a little bit cold on him. Not as cold as I am on one or two others. I don't really like Protectorate, as Andy says. The fact that he had a long break before Cheltenham, you could argue he's fresher than most now, but I think coming off a break, running such a big race in the Gold Cup, I think that's more likely to leave him vulnerable now than if he was, if that was his third run in a month or something like that. So I'm not particularly keen on him. Royal Pagaille, I can see turning the tables. He made one significant mistake in the Gold Cup, which compromised his chance. Otherwise, I thought he ran pretty well. I could see him turning the tables, but again, Andy's point is a fair one. You don't really want to be backing horses on the basis of how they ran in the Gold Cup in this race. Again, this is a race full of slightly iffy jumpers these days. Itchy Feet you couldn't back with stolen money, given the way he jumps fences. Conflated, I don't like. Listen, you can make a strong case for him on his last 2 runs. He won the Irish Gold Cup. The form has worked out pretty well. And he jumped well that day, but he generally doesn't jump well. And he didn't jump well last time either, where he was ridden to pick up the pieces and finish second in the Ryanair. Yes, he was staying on. And it looked like he had a pretty strong chance of finishing second, but he didn't jump the second last and came down. And that is Conflated's issue. I thought he got away with 3 miles at Leopardstown because he was able to dictate, and the others didn't really have the tool that he had. So he was able to go a sort of stride slower than he normally would. Therefore, his jumping held up, and he got a tremendous ride from Davy Russell, who I thought sort of stole it round the turn. Normally, he's been better at shorter trips, but in top class races over shorter trips, his mistakes can come in. So I'm not at all sure he will stay this trip. Again, he's going to get a good ride from Davy Russell, who will try to sort of sneak him into the race, I think, later on. But his overall record is not convincing, and I don't really want him here. On the other hand, Eldorado Allen was ridden to win the Ryanair, and I thought he ran a smashing race. He was beaten 15 lengths. He probably would have finished behind Conflated if that horse had stood up. But the difference between them that day was that Brendan Powell rode to win. He was the only jockey in that race, aside from the winner, who wanted to win from the start, wasn't looking to pick up second or third, or hoping something, that Allaho would make a mistake at some stage. He put the race to Allaho, and he ran an absolute stormer, and he got tired later on, but he kept plugging away to the line. Now, I'm slightly concerned that he had a hard race there, but of course it was over a shorter trip, and he's had the extra day to recover as well. He's been a revelation this season since Stepped Up and Trip. He made all the running to beat Royal Pagaille at Newbury in the Denman Chase prior to that, where he jumped really well, and they rode him as if they had no concerns. Brendan Powell rode him as if there were no concerns about his stamina, And he was a revelation. I thought he jumped really well. I thought he stayed on really strongly at the end. So I can see him actually going out and trying to make all the running. And I think he will jump well, and he will ask questions of the others. As I said, slight question mark about a hard race at Cheltenham, but I think he's the kind of horse who's been growing in confidence this season, and the more racing he's had, the better he's got. So I think he will take his racing better than one or two of these, and I think he's a solid each way bet in this race.
Eldorado Allen, a solid each way bet there for Rory at 6-1. That's with most firms up on the odds checker grids. On then now to the next race on the card, the fourth race at 3:30, and it is the Aintree Hurdle, the Betway Aintree Hurdle, the over 2.5 miles. And Zanahiyr and Epatante are the joint favourites at 2-1. Brewing Up a Storm 11-2. 10-1, Mon Moral, Glory and Fortune 12-1, McFabulous 16-1, and Guard Your Dreams is 33-1. 7 runners here, Andy. How do you see the arguably the big one on Thursday panning out?
Yeah, a nasty one this. I don't know what Rory thinks, but we've got the old archetypal 7-runner race, which is not great for each way backers. Particularly if you're of the viewpoint that the front two take quite a big chunk out of the market, and you want to be on something from a thieving each way perspective. I'm not really sure where we stand on Epatante and Zanahiyr. It was both of them. It was a cracking run to chase home Honeysuckle in the Champion Hurdle. We know that, but this will be the first time that both of them have run beyond 2 miles. So we just don't know. I think you're completely and utterly guessing. Intuitively, you think well, both should stay if they settle and they give themselves every chance. They've obviously got the qualities, but until they actually go and do it, do we really want to take 7-4 each or 2 to find out? The answer would probably be no. Brewing Up a Storm is an interesting runner. I think he's got quite a bit of quality about him. Sometimes his jumping is a little bit iffy. I think he's chucked a couple of races away by just taking it off the ball late on. But he's been safe specifically for this, and he's obviously proven over the course and distance as well, which I think is an intriguing aside. He's also got cheap pieces on as well. I think that's probably getting concentrating over his hurdles because, as I said, he can go a little bit AWOL in that department. So I think he's an interesting runner, along with Glory and Fortune. I thought he ran really well in the Champion Hurdle for an outsider. But he's not to be underestimated here. He hasn't got too much to find with Zanahiyr and Epatante. He was definitely closing them down up the running. I think the triple definitely suit. Like I say, it's one of those races where you look at it, the weights and measures of this lot, and you think, well, there's not a great deal between top to bottom. So I think if you look outside the box and are prepared to be a little bit more imaginative with your selection process, you could come up with something other than the obvious 2 down the bottom. So I'd probably play both of these 2 against the field here. I put that Brewing Up a Storm in that each way Yankee the other day, and I still think he's got a chance of at least bodging into the frame for that project. But at the prices, I think 10-1 in around that mark for Glory and Fortune, he strikes me as being one that could be just a little bit underestimated too.
Glory and Fortune 12-1. 12-1 pretty much across the board there for you, Andy, the way you're playing this. Win only with the 2 places, Andy, or are you still back him each way?
Well, I mean, you could fiddle around and bet him on the 3-place markets. There'll be loads of exotic bets. Yeah. Some firms will probably give you 4 places, just specifically if you just play that market on its own in isolation. So yeah, I'd probably have like half a point win at 12-1 and half a point place, or half a point top 3 finish. Let's say somewhere around 6-4, something like that, just to cover your stake if he does finish in the first 3.
Glory and Fortune, the one for Andy. Positive words though as well for Brewing Up a Storm, who is 11-2. Rory.
Yeah, partial agreement again here. I don't want to be with the front 2 at the prices they are. Epatante hasn't looked like she wants any further than 2 miles. She's got the class for this, obviously. But the fact that you see out 2 miles well doesn't mean you're going to be well suited by 2.5. And it's not always just a case of whether you stay or not. It's just a case of whether you're suited by the nature of these races. And I'm not sure that Epatante will be. Zanahiyr, plenty of good judges have said he wants further than 2 miles, and no doubt he will in time. But the issue with him wanting further is not that he finishes strongly in his races. He just looks slow. And looking slow is not really a massive positive when you're backing a horse at 15-8 or 2-1. So yes, he's been keeping very good company, and he has the best form in the race, Zanahiyr. But I'm not absolutely convinced that he's going to take a big step forward for the step up to 2.5 in and of itself. He's, if he wins, he'll win because this is a weaker race that he's been running in against the best. But again, whether you can back Gordon Elliott's horses blind at this meeting, his form from Cheltenham onwards, Gordon was going to launch a massive attack at Cheltenham. He was very confident about, the strongest team he'd ever sent to the meeting. And yes, he had a couple of winners, but, his handicap winner would have been number 50 on his list of likely winners he would have at Cheltenham. And the other success, obviously, was in the cross country. He had a lot of horses who were strongly fancied who ran badly at Cheltenham, and a lot of horses who have been expected to win since who haven't won. He's something like 2 from his last 75, something like that. And that is not the kind of record you want to have with a top trainer coming into a meeting like this. Clearly, he's going to bounce back sooner rather than later. But do you want to be back in shorties from a yard who aren't getting the results you would expect at this stage? I would say no. And again, I think the way in here is backing a couple of outsiders. There's nothing in this race you can back with any confidence, in my opinion. But what you do is you basically say, right, there's going to be value in one of these outsiders, and I would be inclined to back a couple here in the two place market just to get better odds. Guard Your Dreams is the lowest rated horse in this race, but I've been convinced all year that he wants a strong pace at 2.5 miles. He was only third in the National Spirit Hurdle at Fontwell last time out, but Jordan Naylor, who rode him that day, normally he is a claimer, but he couldn't claim because that was a Grade 2 contest. He also made the tactical error when he was between horses coming to the last, an understandable tactical error. He decided to pull wide because he wasn't sure he was going to get a run. If you pull wide onto the run in at Fontwell, you're pointing the horse towards the stable exit. And lots of horses at Fontwell, when they see the exit there, they jink towards it. And that's what he did. He ended up going wider and wider and lost his chance by doing so. Now, he's beaten 7 lengths, but he would have been right on the heels of the leaders if that hadn't happened. And his form this season is solid. Now, he won the International Hurdle over 2 miles, but there's no doubt in my mind that he will be a better horse at 2.5. He just needs a good gallop to aim at. That's the best way to get a result out of him. And the interesting thing about him in this race is that Nigel Twiston-Davies could have run him in the Coral Cup off a perfectly reasonable handicap mark, but actually kept him back for this instead. So I can see him running above himself. He'll be 28 to 1, 33 to 1 in places, no doubt. And the other one that you're taking a little bit of a risk on, but who will be suited if there isn't much rain. And speaking to someone in Liverpool at the moment, they said there's been no rain today. And whatever rain they were forecast, they think they might get a little bit of that tomorrow, but there might not be that much. So you've got to keep an eye on the forecast and see what's happened in terms of rainfall, because McFabulous would want good ground. He was disappointing in the Cleve Hurdle when last seen over 3 miles at Cheltenham, but that was a day when all Paul Nicholls' horses ran really badly, and the market did not want to know McFabulous at all, and he ran poorly. Before that, he'd finished a very good second in the Relkiel. He would have been behind Brewing Up a Storm. He fell at the last that day, but again, conditions were against him. It was his first run since this meeting last year, and it was on softer ground than ideal for him. And he's not a Cheltenham horse. He's a horse who wants a flat track and good ground. So although he's been underwhelming in 2 runs this season, I could see him bouncing back. And the fact that he's the Nicholls second string in the race, I think, means you get a good price about him. Mon Morale was a winner at this meeting last year. People will expect him to bounce back. As a result, you probably get 20s on the day about McFabulous. And while you couldn't be at all confident about him, he does have the class to bounce back. And if there hasn't been much rain, he would become a player as well.
To take on the top 2 there from Rory as well. McFabulous 16 to 1 best price at the moment. Guard Your Dreams 33 to 1 best price with Ladbrokes, who at the moment seems to be paying 3 places, which could be one to get Rory on the phone to his pals at Ladbrokes pretty quickly, you'd have thought, given he's happy to take the 2 places. So there, yeah, basically taking on the top 2 in the market. Positive words for Brewing Up a Storm, Glory and Fortune, McFabulous and Guard Your Dreams. I'll leave it to you, the listener and viewer, to choose who's made the best case between Andy and Rory there. On to the 405, which is the Randox Fox Hunters, it's the Hunter Chase, effectively. I know these aren't necessarily races that you guys specialise in, but we've got Jet, who is the 130 favourite, Cat Tiger 11 to 2, with Late Night Pass, Porlock Way 7 to 1, Mighty Stowaway and Cousin Pascal both 10 to 1, Maracuja 16s, Pont Avon 16s, 22 to 1 bar. Andy, by no means a Hunter Chase expert. Can you find anything though for us in this one?
Yeah, a lot depends how big or small a snob you are when it comes to working out or deciding whether this race is for you or not. Personally speaking, I absolutely adore this race from a betting meeting because by and large, it doesn't take a great deal of working out. I mean, yes, there's been one or two shocks, but tell me a race there hasn't been shocks in, particularly of the national fences. We got a shock last year with Cousin Pascal winning, but by and large, it tends to go for the horses in the top 3 or 4 in the betting. So you're looking at class, and particularly if you've got a horse that has been specifically saved for this meeting, missed Cheltenham, and has also had a run over the Aintree fences as well. The one that absolutely jumps off the page and smashes you in between the eyes with a wet fish is Late Night Pass, who was a very gallant second in this race last year in the hands of Gina Andrews. Got beat by the re-rallying Cousin Pascal. Who would have thought he would have come back and got back up again? But his jumping was absolutely unbelievable in this race, Late Night Pass. Even when he was unsighted, I watched all of his round last year. He was just spectacular. Stood off when he needed to stood off, got back on his hocks, was very clever when he was in tight. The only blemish on his record on the way round, and it partly wasn't to do with him, he got forced out wide at the Canal Turn. There was a horse that was messing him around and he couldn't quite get in tight to where that he needed to be. And he ended up going a little bit wider, not as wide as the one who ended up almost going on into the cheap seats. And it just cost him 2 or 3 lengths. And in the end, that momentum and margin he ended up forfeiting, cost him the race, in my opinion. But look, he's proven around the track. He should have won his 3 points of putts. He fell when he was well clear in one of them, which is uncharacteristic. It's any time he's fallen in his life. And he's been given a wind up as well. So he just ticks every single box I look for in a bet in this race. And I do like having a bet in this race. The only other one I thought about here was Porlock Bay, who, similarly to my main selection, has also missed Cheltenham. But he was obviously he beat Billaway, didn't he? To win the Fox Hunters. You can't say Fox Hunters now; it's the Hunter Chase, isn't it? It's frowned
I
upon,
think it's both. I think the
this
official
one is
name,
still the Fox Hunter. Yeah,
the official name of this race is the Fox
It
Hunters.
is the official name.
Chase.
Yeah, I still think it's supposed.
It's Cheltenham who's dropped the name.
Yeah, the old woke monkeys that won't be too happy about that. But anyway,
you've gone after snobs and the woke here, Andy. I mean, is this? I think we're gonna have to get you
Make your
on
mind
GB
up.
News, aren't we? Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, let's get back on track here with Porlock Bay. The ground would have been too soft for him last time at Bangor. He wants genuine good ground by and large. But yeah, he's very fresh and obviously he's got a touch of class. So he's another one definitely to come into the mix. But yeah, that Late Night Pass. Yeah, he's probably. That sounds daft. He's probably one of my strongest bets of the day one.
Ooh, exciting Late Night
prices.
Pass.
Yeah,
11-2. That is with Bet365, who are paying 6 places, and Coral, who are paying 5 at the moment. But that could all change, of course, between now and tomorrow morning. Porlock Bay 7-1 with a few firms. The second selection for Andy. Rory, any view here?
I backed Late Night Pass in this last year, so I was not enormously pleased with the result and slightly surprised that he managed to lose from a winning position. I like the connections. I think Tom Ellis is very good at what he's doing. Gina Andrews is a fine point-to-point rider, and Late Night Pass is an ideal horse for this. I know he's won over 3.25 at Cheltenham in the past, but I've not had him down as an especially strong finisher in his races. Essentially, he wins it out in the country with his jumping. It's interesting he's had wind surgery since last seen under rules. Obviously, he's won a point-to-point since then, so he's not had wind surgery since that, just since his last run under rules. Worth bearing that in mind. And yeah, he's a pretty obvious one. I know that Will Biddick wasn't happy with Porlock Bay after he was beaten at Bangor. Clearly, you can use the grind as an excuse there, but he decided shortly after that he wouldn't make Cheltenham because he wasn't happy with the horse, and he'd been trying to get him right for this since then. I'd imagine Will's a pretty good judge that he would get him right for it. But I have to say, I struggled to get away from Jet. Sam Willicorn for me has given him 2 poor rides in the last year. He gave him a poor ride in the National last year, where he basically, I think he thought he was in the Fox Hunter, because he's ridden him as if it's a 2-mile-5 race. There was no way he could have kept up the gallop that he went, but he jumped like a buck. He really enjoyed himself, and he just got tired from the third last fence. To finish 8th, having gone the speed that he did, was a very good performance. He looked as, I wouldn't say as good as ever, but he looks like he hadn't lost much ability when he was a close third at Doncaster. in a handicap on his return. I saw a mark of 145. Not many of these would be rated that highly if you give them a handicap mark. He won a weak race on his next start. And then Sam Whaley-Cohen, I thought, tried to bully David Maxwell at Fontwell last time, and David Maxwell just give him back more than he was expecting. And Jet wasn't seeing the best effect there. Yeah, David Maxwell got the inside, wouldn't be bullied out of it, and did it nicely. That was not Sam's finest hour, in my view. He will be happy on goodish ground here as well. If it doesn't rain, I think if it doesn't rain, they will water the national course anyway, so it'll be good to soft all round. But yeah, if he does what he did last year over this trip, it's enormously important over the national fences to be in the front rank, to be able to go a pace without having to come off the bridle, and to be able to jump at that kind of speed as well. You avoid all the carnage in behind. It's not, you'd imagine that given the length of the course and the stamina that you need for races over the national fences, that you could come from behind. Horses just don't. You've got to be handy. The way that that Jet and indeed Late Night Pass will be ridden here will be a big advantage. And Sam Whaley-Cohen, I've criticised him for a couple of his rides, but his record in this race is exceptional. His record over this course and distance, he's also won the Topham in his time. It's very, very good indeed. And the mistakes that he's made on this horse twice in the last year, I think he won't be repeating them. And I know he's favourite for this. I think he might drift a little bit, because I think most of the shrewd players want to be with proper point-to-point horses. And I think a few of those will shorten up. You might end up getting 7-2 about Jet. And I think that'll be a very fair price.
130 best price at the moment. That is with Coral. Best price for Jet for Rory there. Two more races to cover on this Thursday preview. We have the Close Brothers Red Rum Handicap Chase, just under 2 miles. And before midnight is the 13-2 joint favourite with Frero Bamboo. Global Citizen 15-2, Cheltenham Hero. Gunsight Ridge is 9-1 alongside King d'Argent. Dolos is 11-1. Bold Enough, a Sea of Blue on oddschecker 14-1 with Time White. 16-1 Sky Pirate with Gaelic Coast, and the Last Day 18-1 Bar. Rory, I'll come to you first for this for the handicap chase.
Yeah, there's going to be a huge amount of pace on in the Red Rum, and again, the temptation is to look for something to come off the pace and win this. And horses do hit the frame, sort of sneaking through late on and picking up those are flagging at the finish. But often the key is which of the front runners can jump most fluently, and then the speed tends to hold up. Often with multiple front runners, you're getting horses who've dominated small fields, and 2 or 3 of those who want to go forward will immediately, by not being able to get to the front or by going that stride faster than they normally would do, start making mistakes. And you still end up with horses who go forward dominating. So the temptation, as I said, is to look for hold-up horses. But I'm not sure that's the way to go. On that subject, Frero Bamboo ran really well in this race last year, and I can see him running well again. But again, he tends to sit a fair way off the pace, as he did at Cheltenham. And he ran a tremendous race in the Grand Annual, given where he was positioned. And he's liable to run well again. But I'm worried about if he's going to be in rear of mid-division again. I think that will compromise his chance of winning. And I've actually got a fancy for a horse that normally I've been against. I've been against Gunsight Ridge all season, but I just think this race will suit him down to the ground. He's a good jumper, a horse who travels really strongly in his races. And my criticism of him has been that he's got to the front looking sure to win, and he's kind of idled and let other horses come back at him at the finish. So he's traded, in races he's lost since this time last year. He's traded 7-1 on, 6-4, 9-2 on, and even money in decent races, just because he looms up there looking sure to win, and then he's a bit too polite. He's very much after you, Claude, from the last. But given how strongly he travels and how well he jumps, I just think he's going to be on the bridle for longest in this race. From the last fence, you get a big question about whether he will knuckle down and put the race to bed. But you'll be betting, extra places in this race. And your biggest problem with backing horses each way is that the they run well and they fade out of it late on, or they get caught out of the ground and they're beaten early. You want a horse that's going to race prominently, is going to travel strongly, is going to jump well, and then you hope they get the job done at the end. I think Gunsight Ridge will catch the eye, as he usually does, with how he travels here. He doesn't need to lead. He led last time at Sandown. Ideally, he wants to sit just behind the pace, and this race gives him the opportunity I think, to sit behind the pace all the way through. And Aidan Coleman needs to produce him after the last and try to put his head in front on the line. I think that's how he needs to be ridden. And I think this is one of the few races where horses will drag him into the race all the way through to the closing stages. And that gives him a chance of putting up a career best. As I said, whether you trust him to actually win the race from the last is another matter. But at around 9 or 10 to 1 with extra places available, I think it looks really solid each way.
9 to 1 best price at the moment, Sky Bet, the only firm going 6 places as it stands, but that will surely change between now and tomorrow morning. This is about midday we're recording, so there should be extra places opening up this afternoon and into the morning as well. One there for Rory. Andy, how do you see the Red Rum?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the record is of me and Rory when we duplicate horses, whether it's good or bad. If punters should sidestep.
Sure, it is excellent.
The double penalty with Gunsight Ridge, but yeah, I've been back in Gunsight Ridge in the last 2 or 3 days. Sort of soon as the betting sort of came out for this, he was the one that straight away jumped off the page at me. I've tipped him, I think, at least twice or maybe 3 times this season. I tipped him first time out at Aintree, and I was a little bit disappointed with him, but I just think he was a bit rusty. It was his first race over fences. You got to cut him some slack. And he just looked as though he just needed that run badly, more than anything else. So I've tipped him next time out at Exeter. And like Rory's alluded to, he travelled like the best horse in the race. He looked the winner 2 out. And then none other than Long Press outstayed him. Now, we didn't realise at the time how good Long Press was, but we do know now how good he is. He's probably the best 3-miler in the country. So he was hardly likely to be outstaying a horse like that. But you look back who was third, Longshanks, who's won his next 2 starts. The time figure for that race is extraordinarily good. Like I say, he went through that race like the best horse in the race. He's actually only £7 higher. So if you're a weights and measures man, you look what Long Press is rated now. I think he's in the 160s, isn't he? You think Gunsight Red's like an absolute handicap certainty here. He then went to Sandown, and for the first time, I was really impressed with him. Funny enough, that was the day when I didn't tip him when he won. I thought he found loads for pressure that day. It was bottomless ground. I wasn't sure he was going to be suited to heavy ground, but he really slugged it out and he got the better of Bondorum. And then he was given a kamikaze ride by Aidan Coleman. Aidan Coleman got hooked up in the speed duel all the way through that race, unnecessarily with Bondorum. The two of them went hell for leather down the railway fences, taking each other on. They basically softened each other up. Bondorum fell out the back of the telly. Gunsight Ridge, to his eternal credit, kept on and finished third. He didn't get beat too far, but he got beat by Dolos, who I think has farmed that race in the last 3 or 4 years. Freya Bamboo has obviously advertised the form. So, again, there was nothing wrong with that performance. He's been freshened up. He's run around the track before. This has clearly been a target from day one, the fact that he's run at Aintree on his first run over fences. He gets in here off 134. There'll be loads of pace on, as Rory's alluded to. He doesn't have to lead today. Coleman can just sit third, fourth handy. He'll have the tactical speed to go with them. And he's a novice as well. Novices have won 11 of the last 19 races of this race, similar to the Grand Annual, and lots of other chase races, because they're just, they're so well in. And I think this is easily the best handicapped horse in the race. So if he avoids incident on the way around, sort of 9 to 1, 5, 6 places, just there for the taking that price.
Load up, Gunsight Ridge, 9 to 1, both for Andy and for Rory there in the Red Rum handicap. Pretty much 9 to 1 across the board, but as we've said, keep an eye out for those extra places if available. On to the last, and from the Red Rum handicap to Rosie Red Rum, who is the 9 to 2 favourite for the Mares Bumper here, ahead of Katira at 11 to 2. Ashrow Diamond 6 to 1. Naughtiness is also 6 to 1. Lady Excalibur 10 to 1. 11 to 1 bar those, and the 20 runner Mares Bumper. You're the man to solve this, aren't you?
Yeah, and the nap of the day runs in this. And this could go 6 to 4 if the sort of coincidence once a year punters get involved with this. That if the Red Rum chased the race before, we got Rosie Red Rum here. I mean, it'll look blindingly obvious to the girls that'll just turn up once a year and think, oh yeah, I know Red Rum, I'll back this one.
And the blokes, Andy, come on, let's not get back to GB News again.
Absolutely no, yeah, got to get politically correct. But no, I mean just on a point of ability, I think this mare's a pretty good mare. She was very impressive the day she won. She was very well backed. Milton knew he'd got a good one. Beat a horse called Twin Power, who was obviously very highly regarded, and beat it very easily. They then took this mare filly to what was probably at the time the best UK bumper. It's that listed race that's run on Betway Hurdle Day. That was I think it was the last race on the card. But it was chock full of well-fancied horses. I put at one in that race called Philanderer, who had won very well at Warwick the time before. Authorised Speed, who'd beaten a good field the time before, was a very well-backed favourite from the Gary Moore camp. There was loads of other winners in there from high-profile stables, and she more than held her own against the boys. But she was just given too much to do in what ended up being an evenly run race. It wasn't a crawl, but they didn't go overly quick. But she must have been 20 lengths behind, turning for home. The fact that she managed to get within a length of the winner, passing all those good geldings in the latter stages, just shows how good she is. And she's built like a real, powerful tank, as it were. The fact that she's actually receiving weight here, right down the bottom, is a bit of a gimme. I noticed the hood's gone on as well, because she can obviously be a little bit keen in the early part of her races. But with a big field here, it'll give Michel Bastien license just to basically drop her where he wants, because they'll go a much more stronger gallop. But nothing will be stronger than this filly in the latter stages. And Milton Harris just continues to have winner after winner after winner, and he's doing really well with his bumper horses as well. He definitely knows what he's got. I think he's got a very good one here. I actually think this filly will be a good horse on the flat if they decided to go down that route. She could be contested, listed in group races. She's that good. So she's one of the horses I included in that Yankee the other day. Unfortunately, the prices that I put up the other day are no longer available. But I think she'll go somewhere around the 3-1 mark come tomorrow. So even the 5-1 at time recording, 9-2 at time recording, I think that'll be under serious pressure.
There we have it, 9-2. It already looks under serious pressure. A lot of blue up there for Rosie Red Rum, the nap of the day from Andy. Rory, how do you compete with that?
I don't compete with that. I agree with Andy. I like Rosie Red Rum a lot on her debut. I went to the paddock to see her before that Newbury race, and I liked what I saw. I thought she should have won the race. Mitch Bastien gave her too much to do. He was a little bit too confident, and also when he came with his run, he came on the wide outside, and the winner was right up the inside of the track. And I'm not sure Rosie Red Rum even saw that horse. She still traded short and running. I looked from watching from the stands that she was going to get there with a furlong to run, but unfortunately that was more the angle that made it look like she was going to come past. But I think she would have won that if she was produced a little bit earlier. And my only concern here would be whether Mitch Bastien, who's quite a he is the kind of jockey who likes to sort of sweep through from the back of the field and look stylish. There's a possibility he overdoes it again, but I think hopefully he's learned his mistake from the last run. He is a very capable jockey. Obviously, he can't claim here, but yeah, she was. I went to, as I said, I went to the winners' enclosure afterwards just to see how she'd taken that race, because it often gives you an idea seeing a horse before and after a race. And she was full of herself. She just looked, she looked like she was ready to go out and do it again. 5 minutes after she'd run, more so than the horse who beat her. And I wanted to keep her on side there. I backed her for the champion bumper at Cheltenham at big odds. She was taken out in the day because of the rain. She doesn't want soft ground particularly. Obviously, she won on debut on soft. But Milton Harris has made no secret of the fact that he thinks she would win listed races on the flat if he went there with her. She gets the allowance here, and I think she's got a big chance. The only downside is, Milton's been saying she's coming here for quite a while, and her price was 10 and 12 to 1 2 days ago. So if you had your chance to back her then, so waiting until the last minute to back her at less than half of those odds is the only downside. But yeah, I like her a lot. I think she is potentially very good. And the way this race tends to pan out, and the nature of the straight at Aintree, means it tends to suit horses coming from off the gallop. You don't tend to have hard luck stories as such, and I think there's more chance of horses going for home too early here than would normally be the case. So I think she should have things set up to suit her. And Mitch, I guess he'll come wide of the field again and try to avoid traffic. Again, the only one marginal concern is whether she needs the hood. You know, she's been a little bit keen, but she's essentially just a really strong traveller in her races to date. I'm just a wee bit neutral about whether the hood will actually help her. I don't want her switching off too much. You know, if they get her, if he parks her at the back of the field and puts her to sleep, you know, then the question is whether she'll wake up quickly enough. But in terms of her ability, I've got no concerns. I think she's very, very good. I think she's a lovely prospect because she's not your typical 4-year-old either. She's not just very precocious, a racy little flat filly who gets the weight. She will progress. She's got size and scope and strength about her, and she will keep getting better. So I like her a lot.
Didn't think you two could be more bullish, really, after the Red Rum handicap. Then you got and met Rosie Red Rum in the last. And, you know, Rory, as you say, they're a bit bigger a couple of days ago. But if Rosie Red Rum does go off the kind of short price that Andy thinks that she might, then that 9-2 could still look big come race time tomorrow. So the guys both agreeing there on their selection in the last. That brings our Thursday preview to a close, previewing all the races here. We'll be previewing Friday and Saturday as well. So do look out on the oddschecker YouTube page and on the podcast platform as well, on the podcast feed, where you can get those previews there too, as well as plenty of other preview content too, such as the Masters preview that I hinted at earlier, which we recorded yesterday, and lots of other stuff coming up soon as well. So do download the oddschecker app as well, so you can get the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and plenty of other bits as well, including Andy's tips straight to the app every morning of racing too. Fingers crossed for a couple of winners, and there are certainly some good cases made by the guys, but as is always the case, please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly.